Hi, and welcome to Long Lost Friends. I'm Andrea Goyan.
And I'm Elizabeth Eve King. Today, we are thrilled to be talking to writer Elizabeth Bear. Elizabeth Bear was born on the same day as Frodo and Bilbo Baggins, but in a different year. She is the Hugo, Sturgeon, Locus, and Astounding Award-winning author of dozens of novels, over 100 short stories, and a number of essays, nonfiction, and opinion pieces for markets as diverse as Popular Mechanics and the Washington Post. She lives in the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts with her spouse, writer Scott Lynch. Elizabeth has spoken on futurism at Google, MIT, DARPA's 100-year spaceship project, and the White House, among others. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. And we always like to get started by seeing people's pets. So if you have someone to share,
Well, I actually have somebody on my lap right now who is going to be very bad during this interview. I can pretty much guarantee it. This is Dunk. Oh yeah, look at the grumpy face. Grumpy
yeah,
face.
Exactly.
This is Duncan. He gets very jealous when I talk to people on my computer. He is one of 4 cats because we're suckers. They're all rescues. He has a litter mate named Gurney because my husband is a giant Dune fan. We have Molly, our little semi-feral, who is named after Molly Millions from Neuromancer because she's feral and has claws. And we have Fafford, who is the redheaded barbarian. And we also have 2 horses who are not on camera.
but you wore a shirt for that.
I did.
You
Yes.
wore your
Oh, the horse shirt. Yeah, I wish we could see the horses, but oh well.
Oh well.
But if you go to Elizabeth's Instagram page, you can see lots of pictures of horses, which is really cool.
That's true. Yes, they're Icelandic horses Ormur, which means dragon, and Spola, which means spool or wheel.
Oh,
Very
nice.
cool. Do you have a full-size horse as well? Or just the
No,
minis? The
no. Well,
small
they're
ones,
yeah, just um
Icelandic.
the Icelandic horse people get very upset with you if you call them ponies. They are horses, even though they're small. So I don't want to get into trouble.
Word for me to take cautionary.
Exactly. Next time you talk to an Icelandic horse person, be careful, Andrea. So there's so much we want to talk to you about, but one of the things you mentioned and we thought we would bring up to begin with is the synthesis of mental health, physical health, and creativity and how they affect each other and how to work with that.
I think this has been very much on everyone's mind for the last 4 years for mysterious reasons. But also for me, it's been a real journey since 2021 because I had a cancer diagnosis, and had to go through cancer treatment with radiation and surgery, and found that it really affected my creativity and my ability to write. As a direct result of that, the book that I thought I would be finishing in 2021 or early 2022 is coming out next year, which is the 3rd book in the White Space series. And I also lost a lot of my physical fitness. I mean, I've had some other challenges in that regard. And for me, one of the ways that I deal with my mental health is through exercise. And I've been dealing with my whole life I've been dealing with a chronic pain disorder, but it was really exacerbated by the cancer treatment. And I'm just starting to come back from that and be able to exercise again. So trying to navigate, I think we don't give enough credence or time to the mind-body connection. You know, we tend to treat our bodies as an inconvenience. I certainly do. You know, what is this inconvenient meat that needs sleep and food and exercise and rest and stretching and
Right. Yeah.
Well, people always say like mind over body, which is
yeah.
your mind is in your body, it's part of your body. It's not like one is meat and the other isn't. It's interesting.
Yeah, to quote Terry Bisson, we're made of meat. Um
And I know when you have, any kind of chronic problem in your body going on, it really is so draining, so exhausting for your brain.
yeah.
Just so it's hard to be creative.
Yeah. And for me, learning how to work around that and work around those um challenges, uh to use as neutral a term as I can come up with off the cuff, has been really humbling in a lot of ways. Like, I've always been somebody who had a lot of stamina, who was able to force my way through things, who could, get the job done. And just not being able to do that in the same way, it has forced me to be gentler with myself. And also given me more perspective on I think on the frailties to which all the flesh is heir, you know. I think it's made me a kinder person.
More forgiving perhaps I know for me, it's more forgiving for myself and for
Yeah.
those around me. Well,
Yeah,
and I
that
certainly know that I think a lot of us struggled in a very different way, but I know I struggled with no creativity for the first 6 or 7 months of the pandemic, you know. So I think that is a real global feeling right now.
I think that was very much a lot of people had that experience, that they just couldn't focus on anything except the terrible news coming from everywhere, and that it was very hard to set that aside and write or paint or create or do any of the things that help us cope.
Mm,
So it was a double whammy, right? Because at least I know I process my feelings and my struggles through my work. And having that difficulty, I actually wrote a bunch of a sort of a cozy mystery, because I just needed something that was light and low stakes and fun. And it was a cozy mystery that took place after the pandemic, even while we were in the midst of it, and did acknowledge that there had been one. I'll probably be self-publishing these sometime next year. The protagonist, lost her dad. And so I found that very, very healing in a time when I really needed some healing.
And do you find that, I mean, you add so much of of what's going on in the world and things like that into your writing. Are you adding beyond those cozy mysteries? Are you finding that you're adding all this other stuff that you've been dealing with kind of into your work, the processing of it?
Oh, definitely. It was very interesting for me to deal with the cancer diagnosis in particular, because what I'm writing is mostly science fiction and fantasy, other than these cozy mysteries. And here's Mr. Duncan again, the omnipresent tale. The way that worked was I had to, I'm actually still working through that, and I'm working on a book that will deal with that more directly. Several years ago, I had a story out at what was then Tor.com and is now Reactor, that dealt with a cancer, a science fictional cancer that was intelligent and transmissible. It's called Deriving Life, and I'm working on a novel set in that world where, come on, buddy. I know. It's hard to talk when he's digging his little claws into my leg so enthusiastically. So I'm working on a novel that deals with those tropes and those speculative ideas, but it's probably going to be several years, I think, before it's ready to go out on submission, just because I have so much to process to make it, because I don't want it to be sort of a confessional novel. You know, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be more universally accessible. And you have to get, when I say you here, I mean me. I have to get some more distance to be able to write something that is a fiction and a narrative rather than a journal entry.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you mentioned the cozy mystery and said you would be self-publishing them on your website or a collection or.
Oh, I'm probably going to, I will probably publish them. I'm probably going to use my married name, Sarah Lynch, as my legal first name is Sarah, which I, for complicated reasons, I write as Elizabeth Bear, mostly because my last name is Ukrainian and many people find it unpronounceable. And when I broke into print, there was much less tolerance for blatantly ethnic names in publishing than there is now. So anyway, so I will probably be publishing them via Amazon and Kobo as individual short novels. They're about 70,000 words a piece, and I'm halfway through the third one as of this taping. But they're a nice, it's a nice fun thing that I can write that is not it's like a little vacation from writing that is still writing.
And it's the same protagonist?
They're all the same protagonist, and they're all set in a small town in Western Massachusetts, which is where I live. But it's a fictional small town. You know, it's the typical cozy mystery thing. And I'm writing them for fun. The first, and they have terrible pun titles, of course. They star a animal control officer as their protagonist.
Nice.
What are the pun titles, if you don't mind?
Oh, the first one is called Missing Links. And the second one is called The Pig Sleep.
Very fun.
So those should be out next year sometime.
So do they have any science fiction fantasy elements, or they just straight out cozy mystery?
Not at all. Straight up cozy mysteries. Old school cozy mysteries in the less in the food truck with recipes vein and more in the Agatha Christie small town with a bunch of quirky characters vein.
Is it Jessica? It's the main character. Her
oh, Miss Marple.
Yeah, and then and Murder, She Wrote. Was that?
Oh, Jessica Fletcher. Yes, that's sort of cozy mystery. Exactly.
Did Mrs. Marple have a full first name?
Jane.
Oh, Jane.
How much of a nerd am I that I just know that?
What was
Right.
it? So do you go back and forth between self-publishing and not self-publishing, I guess? Traditional publishing?
Traditional publishing. It depends on the property. The trad market for cozies is pretty tight right now, which is why I'm going to be self-publishing those. The science fiction novel I have coming out next May is going to be traditionally published. And that's the third book in the White Space series, sequel to Ancestral Night and Machine. The obviously the two existing books in that series were traditionally published, and I like to stay in the same lane with a series if I can. So, and traditional publishing offers some real benefits that self-publishing doesn't, and self-publishing offers some real benefits that traditional publishing doesn't. So I think of myself at this point as a hybrid, what they call a hybrid author, which makes me sound like a chimera or something, which I sort of like. Maybe I'm a centaur.
But not a half pony, it's a half
But not
horse.
definitely a horse. Yeah.
So have you done a lot of self-publishing?
A little bit at this point. I have some short fiction out, a novella, and some short stories, and I have self-published a novel that I wrote with Catherine Addison of the Goblin Emperor fame that we couldn't find a traditional publisher for because it's kind of weird and doesn't fit into any of the marketing categories. It's a historical YA mystery that stars Christopher Marlowe, boy detective. And we had a delightful time writing it and just could not find a publisher who wanted to take a chance on it because it's it doesn't fit any of the marketing categories. So
Right.
that's, available through the usual range of online marketplaces, shall we say.
You've done a you've done a fair amount of co-writing, of writing
Yes.
with other. Do you like that a lot? Do you have any thoughts on that you want to share? Tips or?
I love it. And I've had a long successful collaboration with Sarah Monette and Catherine Addison are the same person.
Oh, okay.
So I've written with Sarah Monette and I've written with Catherine Addison, and they are both Sarah/Catherine. The way that we work together is really collaborative and fun, and I really enjoy it. It becomes a game because we don't do the thing where each of us writes a character or each of us takes a plot thread. What we do is one of us will start writing, send the manuscript to the other one. The other one will then edit what the first one wrote and write the next section until she gets bored or stuck, and then send it back. And then that person will go over the edits on the first section, edit the second section, and then start writing a third section. And we go back and forth that way, which gives us a unified voice, which I think is really nice because when we write together, we don't sound like me and we don't sound like her. We sound like us.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And it also means that you don't have to do the drudgery of going through and fixing your own commas. And she does I have this real tendency to get incredibly tangled up in my subordinate clauses, and she fixes all of that for me, and I don't have to do it. And she'll probably forgive me for saying she does tend to lean kind of heavily on the adjectives, and I go through and I take out 37% of her adjectives. So she doesn't have to do that. And
Sounds perfect.
it's perfect. It's delightful. And we have a small side project going now that I can't talk too much about. But
Do you guys
hopefully
work from an outline, or do you just do you have a basic?
some of both. She doesn't outline at all. So I'm usually the one who's like, oh, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, who's like signposting stuff ahead. I generally like to have an idea of where the story is going so that I know what I'm writing toward, because otherwise I tend to write in circles. But when we work together, it's pretty free form, and often she'll like take stuff in a direction that I totally didn't expect, and that's wonderful because then it's like improv. It's a really delightful working relationship, and I have a lot of fun with it, and I hope she does too.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I mean, that not having an outline, so you don't exactly know what's going. It's like, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, and she throws me curveballs, like fantastic curveballs all the time.
Oh, is this going to be your first Sarah Lynch, or have you published a bunch under Sarah Lynch?
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't published anything under that name, so it's going to be a whole new name for me. And
now, is that because it's not speculative? And
yes, and because I want to differentiate the mystery career from the speculative fiction career.
Makes sense. You mentioned that you said something about it being a tight market. I think you said that. Was that the word you used? So what did you mean by that? I've not heard that.
It is hard. I mean, basically what I mean is that it is hard to sell those books in trad publishing right now. With some exceptions, like if they're very romance focused, that's very hot right now, and that's not what I'm writing. And more power to my friends who write romantic mystery, like they're doing great. But I have the romantic soul of a shriveled raisin. So my attempts to write romance are somewhat laughable, and I've learned not to embarrass myself too much. Like I still write relationships, obviously, but I can't get myself into that happily ever after kind of mindset very well.
You can't bodice rip and flex muscles and
that's a lot of I mean, I do read some romance, and I wouldn't say that that's a lot of what's going on in romance right now. I actually just finished reading a queer romance series, and I cannot remember the author's name. They're all the first characters, the character's name, full name, and doesn't do something is the title format of these, and they're delightful books that have a lot of character development, and a lot of like a really strong feminist streak. So I've been but I admire it. I admire the ability to write that. I just can't.
I relate. Every time I've tried to write romance, it just turns ridiculous. I think
we lost Andrea.
We lost her. Maybe the dog ate her cord.
Oh, I think she's coming back.
Don't lose me. I just have to let the dog out of the room.
I think it was a dog-related disappearance.
It was dog-related. Dog-related.
So thank you so much for joining us. It's been a delightful talk and really interesting. We always end up with the best things we learned this week, which are always so difficult to narrow down. But I do have one thing I thought was really interesting, and it was about the vaccinating of bees, because bees are in trouble, as we know, from various diseases. And usually, most of the diseases, it seems, are caused by mites, which causes hive collapse a lot. But there have always been these mites living with the bees. So why is it so detrimental now? And I always think it's basically because we've given the whole planet immune deficiency, so everything's more susceptible. But I also thought, how do you vaccinate a bee? And this is for bacterial diseases. And they put it in a sugar syrup. So they don't have, yeah, and then the bees drink it. Because I kept imagining, tying the thing about the little bee arm. And that's not how they do it, unfortunately, I guess. Yeah. So they were trying to vaccinate these bees against this bacterial disease, and they used these hives that are kept really clean, so they didn't actually, any of them, have the disease anyway. So they don't know whether it works or not, but what was fascinating is that these bees became resistant to all these viruses that they're usually susceptible to. And they're thinking maybe bees have a more generalized immune system, so that if they get immunized for one thing, they'll be protected against all these things. Like if we were, vaccinated for COVID, and it protected us against polio. So that,
Wow.
yeah, that was really interesting to me. And I also thought, well, what if it kills the mites? Because sure, the mites are causing all these diseases, but they've always lived with the bees. So, that's always a problem with our interfering in things, is that we get rid of the mites and we find out, oh God, we really needed the mites. But the mites are all still alive. Didn't kill any mites this.
Interesting.
So that was my best thing.
Interesting. Yeah,
That's
you
fascinating.
you kind of gave me a little segue into one of mine, which was that, which has to do with, yes, particularly frogs, and the problem they're having with fungal infections that are killing them off throughout the world. And UC Riverside has done some research. I'm going to try to say this fungus name. Batrachopa?
Oh, I thought it was Kittredge fungus.
No, it's Batrachophytrium dendropydis, or BD, which is much easier. So BD wasn't around really prevalent until 1990s. And the team at UC Riverside has found that in some of the DNA that they've looked at for that, they found a single strand DNA of a virus that is the smallest known organism, because it's just a single strand, and it's integrated into the genome of those some strains of BD. And they have found that the ones that have that strain have a less virulent response to the BD. So they're hoping that the virus will help them to, if they use it properly, to kind of cut down on how badly the frogs are getting infected. Is it an infection? Hurt by the fungus. But I was thinking the same thing, Elizabeth. I mean, they don't really know yet what that means as they mess with this, what other problems it's going to cause. It's helpful. And that was mine.
Okay, I just have to jump in here, sorry.
Yeah.
Just because I worked in Puerto Rico in the rainforest on Kittredge fungus in frogs. It was before they really understood that Kittredge fungus was a problem, but then they looked into the biological basis and found Kittredge fungus in frogs going way, way back. And it just hadn't been this huge problem before. So once again, my theory is, everything now has immune
Right, they've
deficiency.
messed it up. They've messed things up. So, but hey, let's hope that these other things give us some way to handle it. So Elizabeth, you and I kind of had happy, sort of quasi questionably happy things this week. Now it's Elizabeth Bear's turn.
Well, I'm going to make it a trifecta of animal facts, because the fascinating thing that I learned this week is that ducks and other birds have very sensitive bills. Like, you think of their beaks as being this sort of horny material, like your fingernail, that doesn't have any any touch or taste sensors on it, but it turns out that they do, and that ducks can, for example, taste things with their beak, not just their tongue. So the book that I was reading gave the example of their sensitivity is such that ducks can do the equivalent of a human. Basically, if I gave you a bowl of mixed grape nuts and fishbowl gravel, you could just, like with your lips, pick out the food and leave the gravel behind. And I thought that was fascinating and really cool.
It's really cool. I didn't know that. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. So
that's very cool. So for now, I'll go out and test it.
I
There
don't
you
recommend
go.
eating fishbowl gravel.
well,
So
thank you so much. Yeah, for joining us, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me. This has been
Lovely.
delightful.
Oh, are you going?
Elizabeth and I have a regular thing we kind of do, and then every now and then we have a brain moment where, oh, okay. Elizabeth, it's your turn.
Oh, is it my turn? Sorry.
It's your turn.
I'm going to say, please like this video and leave comments below. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification buttons so you don't miss any episodes. If you want to support our publication and help us publish more original content, please support us on our Patreon page. Thank
And
you
we
so
want
much.
to thank, Maria Korolov and Alex Korolov for helping us put all this together. They edit and produce these. And thank you very much for their awesome input and help. And once again, thank you, Elizabeth, and all of you who come and watch us. Thank you. We'll see you next time we are here.
See you next time.